Welcome to Heroes and Droids, your guide to movies and TV shows about superheroes, sci-fi, Disney, and action. From Marvel to DC, from Star Wars to Star Trek, from James Bond to the Fast and the Furious. We will review theatrical films and streaming delights you care about most, and this week we're reviewing Star Wars, The Bad Batch, Episode 3, titled Replacements. Yes, we are enjoying this animated series on Disney+. And there's 16 episodes. We're 3 in, so we'll be here talking about this for weeks to come. And I hope you're enjoying this. But let me introduce the rest of the crew. My name is Doc Rotten, and we also have the Slattman, Chris Slattery. How you doing, sir?
Good. I'm excited to talk about this episode.
Yes, this is going to be fun. Yes. Also joining us is podcaster, Rockstar, and international cosplay queen, Vanessa. Vanessa, how you doing?
Doing good.
And we also have award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore and Uber Star Wars fan, right? You are a Star Wars fan from the OG days.
Good podcasters talk about Star Wars.
Yes.
That's a reference to a line, which does make sense now. Good soldiers follow orders, but yeah, I'm an OG Star Wars fan. I'm old enough and dusty enough to have been around when the original films came out. I had the toy.
Are you saying you're a Star Wars hipster almost?
How dare you call me a Star Wars hipster? I am not a Star Wars hipster.
No, you're like Bucky, right? You were there when it was written.
Yes, my arm comes off when somebody does the 5-finger death punch on it.
Man, I feel more like a Star Wars boomer. All right, but
there are a few of those.
Yes, let's get into this. Let's talk about the show. All right. Star Wars The Bad Batch, Episode 3 came out May 14, 2021, directed by Brad Rao and Nathaniel Villanueva. Vanessa will have to tell me if I did okay with that. I think I did an 0 and 7/8 at the end, but we'll go with it. Written by Matt. Michnovetz. The cat. I tried to prepare for this too, and it totally has gone out of my brain. All right, cast includes D. Bradley Baker, Michelle Ang, Stephen Stanton, and Noshir Dalal, among others. The Batch gets stuck on a desolate moon, and of course, that's not the only plot because we also follow Crosshair as he experiences. I'm glad you guys think this is great. Thank you for joining us. That's our audience, folks. We talk to dogs. All right. Yes, Crosshair encounters Admiral Tarkin and Admiral. Was it Rampart? Right.
Rampart,
and of course, Admiral Tarkin has gotten a promotion. What is Tarkin's new
He's an
title?
Imperial Governor now.
Imperial Governor. Yes, and they're starting something new. We're going to be talking about all that. So there's a lot going on in this episode. It's kind of got that split thing that Star Wars is known for, as a couple plots go on simultaneous, especially.
And in fact, those animals are moon dragons.
I know, that's awesome.
The moon part of the episode.
Yes, they're chasing down all our flashlights,
electronics.
Yeah.
Yes,
batteries,
the shiny stuff.
All those iPods we have in the drawer back there from back in the day. All right, so let's get into this. What we're going to do. Why did I do this? We're going to get into our first impressions. We're going to talk about the show a little bit, and then we're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score, 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And let's get into it right away. And you know what? Slapman, you're up first.
Oh, well, thanks. I was expecting it to be the other Chris.
Russian roulette for a second there.
I really like this episode. I like seeing the growth of Omega throughout it. I like seeing our core group of the Bad Batch actually come to learn that she is capable, and she's earning her spot within their hearts and within their soldier hearts. For lack of better terms. And I love every scene involving Crosshair in this episode, from the look of anguish and despair and conflict in his eyes, to good soldiers follow orders, to there's a lot to talk about that I don't want to get into because of spoilers, but I love Crosshair in this episode.
Yeah, it was good to have him back for sure. All right, Vanessa, you're up next. What was your first impression of episode 3?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Omega, seeing her grow is really cool. This is a bit of a softer episode, I feel like. You know, it wasn't so much hard in your face action going on. We had some very tense moments. But overall, it's a bit of a gentler episode, and it gives us more of that information about what's actually happening with the change from the Republic to the Empire and what the Empire is doing and how those changes, you know, when we see it in the movies, it's just there, right? It's something that's happened, but it's interesting to see it slowly take place. It just makes it feel even more real, makes this universe even more immersive as you're getting into it. And I like seeing that through the eyes of our Bad Batch and watching kind of because all of this, Omega has such unique and personal knowledge about them. So much is new to her, but at the same time, she's aware of so much. And I think seeing that is really interesting. And definitely Crosshair. You know, John Walker was one of my favorites of Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I think it's because he possesses that kind of anti-hero or that kind of sadness to him. And Crosshair is really embodying that as well. You know, there's things that are happening to him out of his control, but yet he's still being affected by it. So that's really an interesting journey to follow too.
Absolutely, and we're going to get more of that as we go, I presume.
Oh yeah.
All right, Christopher G. Moore, your time is now. What is your initial thoughts of episode 3?
You know, I have to disagree a little bit. I don't think it's a gentler episode when you have a whole group of people that are massimered.
Yeah, so there's tense moments.
Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing gentle about a bunch of innocent people getting killed. But I mean, it is kind of gentler when it comes to just not full on action, which I can understand. Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I mean, I agree. It's definitely good to see growth with Omega and how, how she was able to sort of like get outside of her comfort zone and basically help out the crew, when help needed and getting in there. And it's all, the Joseph Campbell stuff of the hero's journey going into the belly of the beast type thing. We had that with her going inside to going after the moon dragon, that kind of stuff. So yeah, so there's some really great moments. And then we also sort of, it's good to see that. I mean, we see the really sort of dark side of what's his name again? The
Crosshair.
We get to see the dark side of Crosshair because he's willing to do whatever, but at the same time, we do sort of see that like there is a little bit of inside of him that's still there, involving him missing his crew, his buddies. And how that, he's basically becoming that, like that manager who has to train somebody come in and realizing they're going to have to take over his job. I mean, that's basically what's happening here. Mm-hmm. He's the Taco Bell manager that's having to train the new recruit so he can get pushed out.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things, especially the little things involving the long necks, the long necked aliens. I'm gonna start calling them long necks.
They're Loch Ness monsters.
The Loch Ness monsters. The long neckians is what I'm gonna start calling them. Yeah, the interesting thing of how we also are starting to see sort of like stuff that's probably going to tie in to stuff with the movies, with Palpatine and his clones, to the stuff we saw in Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be kind of interesting how that plays out as well. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, and also just how it ties into even things like Rogue One. That's one of the great things I think Dave Filoni has done a really great job of, is just incorporating all these facets and elements from all these different Star Wars properties, and either making it full canon or also changing it up to where it makes more sense within the Star Wars universe. And so they're doing a good job of it. But yeah, it's definitely moving forward. I mean, it still blows my mind. We have like 16 freaking episodes. I was like, wow, that's a lot of story to tell. And I was like, I feel like by the end of it, we're going to be saying, remember the long time ago
In a
in a
galaxy,
galaxy
far,
far away when we started watching this show. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the show as it's going along.
I am too. What I'm really learning to appreciate, or realizing I'm appreciating, with not only the Bad Batch and the other animated series before it, and of course Mandalorian, is that they're really capitalizing on the serialized, the serial storytelling that the original Star Wars was kind of based on, right? That it looked back at those and looked back at like army footage, air fighting footage and stuff like that to kind of develop its approach to the story. And you really get a sense of that here, because while it doesn't necessarily end on cliffhangers like the serials from the old days would, but it definitely has that storytelling. We get a little bit and we get a little bit more, which is a lot different than the movies. And I'm really digging it. I'm really loving that approach. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm even enjoying the dogs enjoying it. For some reason, it's working even more so here for me with these characters, because we're seeing our characters change and other characters, new characters grow, and we're getting world building as well. And
that's probably my HelloFresh order, so you can blame it on HelloFresh.
There you go.
Sponsor us.
Yes. Between Taco Bell and HelloFresh, we're all going to go down and get something to eat here after the show. You can join us. Anyway, so there is basically two storylines going on in this episode, and I'm enjoying both of them. I really like how Omega is finding her position, her place in the crew, and how they're beginning to accept her and realize her potential. And of course, as you guys have mentioned, Crosshair, and he's involved with how the Empire is building and changing and things that we're expecting, and of course his own inner conflict. So there's a lot of things going on without being heavy-handed, and it's really good storytelling. And you really get, even though it's not action like Vanessa was saying, there still are some really strong beats in here, and important things happen with some gravity to it. So I guess I'm saying it's a true success, and I'm really enjoying it. And this episode did not disappoint.
Well, and I think we see sort of an evolution of all the characters in this series so far. I mean, because you have the Bad Batch that started out, in their mission, and now they really don't have the same enemies to fight anymore. So what's their purpose as soldiers? At the same time, incorporating this new member of their Bad Batch with Omega, having to deal with that. I mean, look at how Wrecker's changed. For 1 minute he's like trying to take food away from Omega, and the next minute, he's creating a space for her on the ship, which is they're learning heart. That's going outside of their comfort zone in the same way Omega goes outside her comfort zone for stuff, to realize that she's a part of it. Even Hunter, who gets incapacitated and then realizes that, well, there's some spunk to this kid, and bringing her on a mission or whatever. So they're all sort of like changing as this series goes along, trying to all find their purpose in the world as the world changes around them. And I think that's a great thing. And I'm sure we'll see elements of that with Crosshair as well, as he realizes that maybe good soldiers don't follow every order. If the people giving you orders don't have your best thoughts in mind. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. And we have like 16 million episodes to go where we're going to see even more evolution of that. It's like, how much more can we do? But I mean, I'm sure they have a purpose for it, and that's going to be an interesting journey as we go along.
Definitely. I really like the side story that we're getting to between Echo and Tech, the development of their relationship, because you see the two of them together a lot. And then after having watched their episodes from Clone Wars and seeing how Echo kind of joined the group, just as like a side thing, that they incorporated that. I really like watching that kind of relationship a lot too, because they're very funny together. And it almost seems like they're very rude to each other, but it's from a place of understanding, I guess.
Yeah, camaraderie.
But it's like Knight Raider and Kit to some degree, because I mean he's basically one of the tools, right? Because he's even got like the hand tools.
Yeah.
So I mean, they sort of they're like the, I don't want to say Tweedledum, but they're like these twins that sort
More
of
advanced
powers activate
Mhm.
to work together to change any kind of tech that needs to be changed. I know I make weird references.
What to the Wonder Twins of all things? Well, I do have one question for you, Christopher, and that's Omega. You, of course, started off with episode 1, kind of going, "Oh no, we have a kid, and I don't know if I like it." And you said you've been warming up. This episode, to change your mind in any way?
I mean, she's definitely warming up to me. I mean, there was one part where I yelled at the screen when she puts down the gun. I was like, "Don't put down the gun! There's a monster!"
She doesn't know.
But at the same time, I think that we also realize that I feel like that she has some kind of force sensitivity. I mean, her sort of, I mean, I guess it could be just her realizing what the creature is doing or whatever. But I mean, the Jedi have had sort of a way to communicate and be sensitive towards animals and that kind of thing. So I think, when with her sort of getting out there a little bit more and finding her purpose. I mean, she even, like, we saw her in these episodes or whatever, where she took off her long necky and jewelry, to where she's like, she doesn't feel like she's no longer a part of that. She's part of this group, and then she's trying to find her purpose as part of that group. And so, yeah, so I think she's definitely growing on me. It's becoming less Oliver, the Brady Bunch, and more integral part.
Wow, you are pulling them out of the bottom drawer on that one. That's awesome.
It honestly kind of reminds me of the growth that Ezra had in Rebels too, where he started off as the annoying kid, but as his story progressed and as the series went on, he became more confident. He became more like he found himself, and he became a great leader and all that. So
well. Yeah, well, you know what? I will have to give kudos to Vanessa for making me realize that most Star Wars stories usually start with a whiny protagonist.
Milk baby.
Or I mean, Anakin, like
Luke.
Yippee! Where you're just annoyed with this little kid. So, I did, and now
the only time has been Grogu, because he's just been amazing from the start.
Yeah,
the minute you see him, you're just like,
I think that's
come to me.
Yeah, and I felt like they figured out a new way to do that. But in, like, the first episode of this, like, oh great, we're going back to Anakinville or Lukeville.
Yeah.
I want to get some power converters.
I know, oh my god.
But
I see a lot of correlation too between her or this series and Mando, especially when we got to her room, because I thought a lot about Grogu's little room that Mando had made for him in the ship, that little space that he had. So when I saw her little space, I was like, oh, that's very sweet. This was had some very sweet moments. Yes, it had massacre of innocent people, but it
possibly with a flamethrower.
I know, that was really intense.
That was dark.
It was.
Well, I mean, this is for the family.
So now that the droids aren't the thing, they have to be a little bit more careful about what they show.
Yeah, that's true.
You
can't didn't have anything happen to a droid or a droid do whatever.
Well, yeah, and I think that's definitely going to be an interesting thing, because now we're sort of getting into, like, you don't necessarily have to worry about killing off a mass amount of droids.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I guess
that was a big move.
Yeah, although we've also put up with killing off a mass amount of stormtroopers over the years as well. So beggars can't
Yeah,
be choosers.
one of those gets it in this episode as well. So interesting.
Mm.
So let's jump on that because Slattman, I believe it was you that made the prediction last week that we would start seeing, or we talked about when would stormtroopers start to become part of it, and we were thinking a little later down the line. We didn't know it was going to be the very next episode. How thrilled were you when they started bringing the replacements, the title characters?
Not very thrilled as much, but I'm interested. I'm very interested to see where it goes, but it's kind of depressing actually, because after watching the Clone Wars for so long and so many episodes, it's sad to see in 3 episodes of Bad Batch. It's just like, okay, yeah, we can't deal with the clones anymore. We just need to get rid of them. And it's just like, oh well, I thought this took a couple years, not a couple months.
It's so cool to see it unfold like that. And that line that Rampart says about you cannot underestimate the value of people that like enlist of their own
volunteer,
will.
right?
Yeah. And hearing that is just so impactful.
It's also very interesting because we know that by the time the Empire, by the time the original trilogy, we know that the Empire is not taking volunteers as much as voluntold.
Yes, that's true.
So
younglings, right, in a different way.
Yeah.
But there was a line from one of the 4, they're not really stormtroopers yet. They're more like the TIE fighter pilots. At least appearance-wise.
Like Death Troopers.
Right. But appearance-wise, right? Because they're not in
they look very similar to the armor that was used on Coruscant for the Royal Guard troopers, but darker, so those were a dark blue, if I remember correct, or a lighter blue, but these are more of a dark blue. So
interesting. It's always fun to look at all the different armors and see them out there. But one of the 4 characters has a really interesting line, I thought, that where they said that the Empire has treated them far better than the Republic ever did, which is an interesting view on what's happening from the oppressed, if you will. Right. Some are getting corralled away and getting numbers, but others are finding opportunity.
So with the Republic, there was never an army of the Republic. There was always every planet or every colony had their own militia. And it wasn't until the Clone Wars that they actually had an army for the entirety of the Republic. So it's very different from, it's just a very different when you have a dictatorship where it's just one army over everything. You don't get differences of how they're treated because even though you're a militia, the Republic never really said, oh no, you're not a part of the Grand Army of the Republic. We don't need that. So
that and even though there's still a lot of politics that happen, and of course Phantom Menace felt like it was very politicky, but there's a lot of politics still involved where it's all about money, and there's always going to be people that are going to be in get the short end of the stick when it comes to different cultures and places within the Star Wars universe where there's going to be people that will be treated badly, compared to those people that are richer.
And who knows, because these 4 people are considered like the best of the best in terms of what they recruited. It might be that because they're the best of the best, they get the best treatment.
An interesting thing, though, we've also seen a transition to where the stormtroopers in the past had like blue laser bolts, and now they're turning into the red laser bolts that are known, for the stormtroopers and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. I wonder why they lost the ability to shoot straight. Anyway, let's talk about
volunteer versus voluntold.
There you go. Maybe it's the weapons. Have you ever thought about
when
that?
You're having to wear armor that doesn't protect you?
Yeah, the cheapest.
It's just uncomfortable and doesn't allow you to shoot straight.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow you to see straight.
Doesn't protect you from
and you
anything.
get shot once and you die. It's just
So I watched actually a really interesting video. Sorry to go on a sidetrack on
No,
this,
let's do it.
but I watched a really interesting video talking about the differences between clone armor and stormtrooper armor. Stormtrooper armor was designed to be cheap and to help the wearer survive impacts, to survive grenades, to survive explosions, shrapnel, things like that. But it was never designed to allow them to survive blaster bolts, because they thought if the people wearing this armor are intimidating enough because they're a part of the grand army of the empire, they can withstand a couple of blaster bolts to an entire battalion and just accept their losses. But if there's a massive explosion, they want them to be able to survive. But the clone armor was designed the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
So it's much more expensive because it's designed to help them withstand a blaster bolt from the droids and not and all of that. So it's very interesting.
Well, Tarkin's already talking about things being cost prohibitive.
Well, Tarkin's a cheapskate. He's a cheap ass. So he doesn't really care about the people inside of it. He just cares about like, how much is this going to cost me? And I think that's the sad part of it. He wants to be this brute throughout the galaxy, but at the same time, he doesn't want to treat the people that are actually protecting his,
he was one of the few that was openly against the Death Star at certain points because, and I quote, the Emperor is putting too much money and resources into this project when it's going to fail, or when it has the potential to fail.
Where's the lie?
Yeah, there's a whole subplot in the Thrawn books where he's trying to work with Thrawn to come up with a way to come up with better technology than the Death Star to promote to Palpatine to invest in. And one of them is an enhanced TIE fighter that has a shield and that has a built-in shield and hyperdrive.
There's probably only one ply toilet paper on the Death Star. Because,
one ply? No. Well, at least they have it. All right. Let's talk about the Kaminoans real quick, because Kaminoans,
long neck ends.
The Loch Nessians. There's a small little subplot with them because they talk about a couple things. They talk about the Jango Fett's DNA is degrading, so they're having they're having their own challenges, but it also kind of points toward that there might be other DNA that they're using. Let's jump into that and kind of transition into what's going on. What do we think is going on? Who is Omega? Because all kinds of things. But Vanessa, you had some thoughts about that particular statement about the degrading of Jango Fett's DNA and what that meant.
Well, in that conversation, so I have a bit of a counter theory at this point to Omega being force sensitive, because it seems like she's the best of the best, right? Like she is finding out she has all of our Bad Batch's abilities, right? Mm-hmm. They've kind of made her to be the best clone with the best abilities. And in the conversation that Nalase and the senator are having, they talk about that. We need to present them with your little project, your science experiment that you've been working on, which they don't say Omega directly, but it alludes to it being about her.
Yeah, definitely.
To present this amazing clone that they can create, therefore to keep them in business, because still business, I was leaning towards it. Maybe they didn't like the direction that the Empire was going at first as I was watching this episode, but at the end, it really just feels like it's all self-preservation based. So, that means they're going to try to have to find her. But Nalase kind of already helped her get away, right? So I'm interested to see like how that's going to play out, because clearly she doesn't want that to happen. She doesn't want her to be used in that way. But they're saying in order for us to survive, we're going to have to present them with something better. So I don't know, knowing what we know about the future of Star Wars and how this could potentially play out. I don't know, because it also just doesn't seem like you get a lot of her apprehension about what they're doing to Crosshair and how they're treating him. So I don't know. They made these clones for the Republic, not for the Empire, right? That still sits in the back of my head, whether that's a motivation or not, but I felt a lot of that.
Yeah, I like that we have those two characters kind of floating around in the background. It feels like whatever their little subplot is going to be larger as we get into the double digits in this season. Because there's a lot of different theories out there about what DNA or what we'll just call it DNA because of what that's what we're used to. They're using for the cloning, right? Because Jango Fett is the obvious answer, but there's other things that give you, maybe it's the Emperor, maybe it's somebody else. Who did we want that to be?
Define want.
Because
what we talked about pre-show is not what I want it to be, but
what it
it's
may
an
be,
option.
Or what it could be.
Well, let's follow that. What was that option there, Slattman?
I mean, there's been a lot of Jedi on Kamino over the course of the Clone Wars, and I'm just saying, there's one Jedi that has a lovely accent like Omega and has beautiful blonde locks.
Oh no!
That accent.
Yes, Obi-Wan
Mr. Kenobi.
Yes.
But she looks so much like Palpatine.
She does look like a Palpatine. Maybe could it be a
hybrid?
A hybrid?
Are we going Indominus Rex on this? A hybrid of all the Jedi.
She's gonna go invisible.
Yeah, I mean, so we lean to those kind of theories, lean toward it back being force sensitive, and the only thing that I kind of feel like Vanessa, I feel like I'm in Vanessa's camp, with the exception of one thing about her being force sensitive or not, and that's what she said to Crosshair in the first episode, because she said, you don't have a choice. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
So she knew what was going to happen. Now that could be explained two ways. One, being force sensitive. The other is that, she overheard. She was privy to what was going to happen, right? So, so it depends on which way you want to take it. The way it was presented to us feels more like the former than the latter. Thoughts?
I have a question. Do you think that Omega is aging rapidly, or do you think that they just they took that away, that she's just aging at a normal progression?
She probably has rapid aging, but honestly, right now, it's only, like, in terms of story, it's probably been a couple weeks to a couple months, and I don't think that's enough time to show.
Because she's like 12, right?
Yeah.
We're assuming she's like 12 years old.
Well, we have 16 episodes, so maybe she might pull a species and
they might.
I just wonder, if she's gonna.
They might have a time jump.
How do you do that, Christopher?
I know I make trivial references that most people probably will not get, but yeah. I mean, I think for me, it would be interesting if she was made with Obi-Wan DNA. I think for me, that would be more interesting, because I think as much as I liked Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker, to me, it would have been more interesting if Rey's lineage had been more from Obi-Wan as opposed to it being Palpatine. And so I think if they tied it more into Obi-Wan, and also that would be a good way for that character to pop up in the Obi-Wan series at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they could do anything to explain it, right?
Yeah. If it was a blend, they could have it be both, and we could still.
I mean, there's always the possibility that Palpatine's just like, you're a Palpatine, and she's like 1% Palpatine.
Well, that's the thing. Or why
Palpatine is 1% Palpatine at this point.
At the same time, why should we believe what Palpatine says?
Yeah,
he is an evil. I mean, I'm sure this might piss off some people, but Filoni does a great job of making stuff work that people might have issues with the movies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he
And so
has that.
this might be a way around, which some people think that that's what Filoni's doing, is that he's trying to make sense stuff that people had issues with the new trilogy.
Yeah, he has a keen fan connection to do that. He's done, what he did with Boba Fett alone, right? He showed us the promise of the character in Mandalorian season 2, and he's fixed a lot of other things, especially with the Clone Wars, right? Slattman. So, in the rumor mill out there right now, there's a lot of rumors about Rey returning to the series in some fashion. There's this weird thing about whether it's a young one or a young version of her or an older version of her with the actress returning. I know that you, Slattman and Christopher, you guys were getting into it. I
don't know if we were getting into it.
Well,
it seems like we were arguing.
We weren't having fisticuffs or anything.
No. You were exploring those notions. Where I'm heading with this is Omega going to lead into what we're reading now with those discussions?
I mean, the writing's on the wall.
I like that.
I mean, there's a lot of people that were like, there's a lot of people that are like, didn't understand the whole thing in Rise of Skywalker. How like, what? Rey's a Palpatine, blah, blah, blah. So I think this, again, like most things, this might be a good way to sort of explain how that all happened, and how that came about. So, I mean, and I know that supposedly the actress who played Rey, she's, her roles haven't been abundant since Star Wars, so, and she seems to be more open to coming back. So, this might be a good way to integrate her back into the Star Wars universe. I mean, I'd love to see some movies just based on her character, which not dependent on all these other things that we've dealt with in the sort of the normal Star Wars story. So yeah, I think it would be a good way to do that, and I mean, at the same time, I think Star Wars also has a problem sometimes with trying to over-explain everything. It's like, do we really need to know the background behind this? And it's like going back.
Some would argue yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like,
that's why we got Rogue One, right?
Yeah, it's like sometimes
Rogue One works. Rogue One works.
Rogue One is an exclusion to that. I mean, but there's also elements of the prequel trilogy that you don't necessarily didn't know. But
I think we can say midi-chlorians are the example of you're going too far.
Yeah.
You're going too far.
Yeah.
But see, he still found a way to make a way to make that work.
Yeah, well, exactly.
He still found a way to make that work and not. Like,
it will be interesting to see if Daisy Ridley will return to the role of Rey.
It would have to be a time jump, right? If we're following the connections that we're making, there would have to be some sort of time jump.
But what would they do? Why? I mean, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It's really
unless it's like a premonition or a vision or something. I don't know.
If she's going to be part of
seem
Mandalorian,
like it would work. But what do I know?
There could be a time jump in the Mandalorian for that. So
yeah,
I mean,
there could be, yeah.
We're gonna go.
I mean, they've done time jumps. They've done time jumps in Marvel, so they could
first
do
of
one
all,
here.
Grogu is 50 years old in Mandalorian. And he's still a baby. So I'm sure 22 years is not really going to be that huge of a bump for him. Maybe the terrible 60s or terrible 80s or whatever for him.
Maybe he'll finally be able to speak at that point.
Well, yeah. And I think also Mando wears his helmet a lot. So.
Do we want to see Grogu go through puberty? I don't think so.
Does it sound like
we
Yoda?
don't want to see teenage Grogu.
No.
Oh, man.
But I want to know if he sounds like Yoda.
Do you think that's an actual speech pattern that alien species? I mean, if he's not around the alien species, would he actually speak like that? It's like,
what was Yoda, 900 years old or something? Maybe that's how everybody talked back then.
Well, no, but like it's like not like being born like if your family speaks a certain language and you're born outside of that family.
Yeah.
you don't really speak the same thing. So I would assume that he wouldn't speak like Yoda, even though
What would he
people would
sound
want him
like? I
to.
wonder, because he would have heard Yoda, and he would have heard Mace, and he
Oh,
heard
that's
all these
true.
people going around. So who knows what he's gonna sound like?
Well, we went off track. But that's
Sorry.
but I think that's the cool thing about being a Star Wars fan is that one little story leads out to all these little
one little 2-second teaser.
No kidding. No kidding. All right. Well, I think it's time to wrap this up and give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And during our final thoughts, if you have any theories, throw them out there. But before we do, if you're listening, one thing we want to do is thank you for hanging out with us. We hope you're enjoying our reviews and many others that we have. Not only are we covering the Bad Batch, we've covered both seasons of Mandalorian and, of course, the Marvel shows, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Loki's coming up in a few weeks. Oh, joy.
Gonna have to take off my Star Wars hat and put on my Marvel hat.
Mhm.
That week we're gonna have a hat on a hat. We're just gonna have them both on. They're gonna look like Mickey Mouse ears, and that's not.
It's gonna be like that WandaVision rabbit hole again, where we're like, oh, what's gonna happen next?
But if you want to support us, it's real easy to do. Just hit the subscribe button down below or share with a friend. We'd love it if you would. It would do us a lot of good, and we'd love to hear your comments, especially when it comes to all these silly theories. Let us know what you think. We want to take a quick moment to thank our patrons who, without their support, we wouldn't be able to do not only Heroes and Droids, but Horror News Radio, Decades of Horror, and Grissom Magazine. So thank you all so much. But let's get into this. Our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. Slattman, of course, you are up first.
I really like this episode. I loved seeing the development of Omega. I loved seeing we barely talked about it, but what was it? The what dragon? Christopher G. Moore? Moondragon. I love the Moondragon. That design was so cool. And I believe that's something that was introduced in the extended universe, and Filoni's just like, that's awesome, bring it in to canon. But there's like 50 billion things he's done with that, so I'm happy he keeps doing it.
Mhm.
I love the touching moments that we get, especially when Wrecker everything with Wrecker and Omega just melts my heart, and he's just he's the best big brother. And I really like where they're going with Omega too. I like that she's becoming a part of the team, and by the end of it she might be like a bona fide badass in her own way, which I mean some would argue she's already there, but she could be in that slow-mo explosion behind you like action pose with every character. Like she would feel they're building her up to feel like she deserves to be in that potential shot, and I really like it. I like where they're going. I also really like everything to do with the Empire, and especially Crosshair, and that leads me to my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the scene where they get back from the mission, and Crosshair goes into the room that the Bad Batch, it used to be their quarters, and he sees the mission mark on the wall, and he just goes and sits down on the bunk, and you see that feeling of loss and that feeling of being alone and kind of almost remorse, and just in his eyes as he's just sitting there and just reflecting on everything that's done, and just staring at the other people, because they all went onto the other side of the room staring at the rest of his new squad. And I feel like that's planting some amazing seeds of him being able to have that redemption story, that either sacrifice or turn away from the dark side to join the light at the last second to help out our heroes. Like it's a very Star Wars arc to have. Some would say it's the original arc of Star Wars, and I love what they're doing with the character, and I love that scene for that reason. This episode I'm going to give a 4.5 out of 5.
That's good. That's good. I like that. All right, let's move on. Vanessa, you are up next. Your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
Yeah, I totally agree with Chris again. I thought this was a great episode. I like that it took some different turns and we got some, it's informative without being over communicative, I think. It gives us the information that we want. It shows change and transition and developments happening. But for me particularly, I loved Crosshair's story. I love seeing where that's going, and I love seeing where Omega's going. I'll keep it short. I'm just gonna focus on her because my favorite scene is the scene with her and the moon dragon when she gets in there and she conquers her fear, to a certain extent, because the thing is yelling, screaming, and growling in her face, and she has no idea. This is something she's never encountered before in her entire life. So many things are new to her, yet she's got the will to be strong and push past and conquer these fears and make smart decisions and give herself time to use her brain. This, from what I'm seeing, this amazingly smart brain that she has that they've given her. And just I'm so interested to see where she's going to go and what they're going to do with her character, because I really like her a lot. So yeah, and I thought the moon dragon was super cool too. When she finally gave it the flashlight and then seeing how it absorbed that energy, flashing like that in the dark, I thought was really awesome. And she completed the mission too by the end of it, right? She did what they set out. She did what they set out to do. So I really, really like that a lot. And I'm going to give this one a 4.5 as well. I enjoyed this episode a lot.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Christopher G. Moore, your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
Yeah, I enjoyed the episode as well. I think I did think it's funny, like you have this little kid, it's like, here you go, is this what you're wanting? Goes through all this stuff to sort of get what they were wanting, and he's like Hunter's all passed out. But yeah, it's I think this show is really getting better as it goes along, as it's starting to tell the story and these elements start popping up more and more with what's happening both with the new empire to what's happening with these characters as they evolve and try to figure out what's their new place in this world now that they're not fighting the same enemies as before. And I think with Omega, she's definitely found her place as part of this weird little family. And I think it'll be interesting as we sort of like get to know more about her and what exactly, what her purpose is. I feel like she has some force sensitivity, it ties into the whole thing of like, I sense much fear in you, like, with her being able to sense emotions or even sensing like how an animal isn't as evil as what he looks, So yeah, I think it's a great episode that's, and also sort of opens up some things in the future, with, certain characters and what they're going to do, especially with Crosshair, to where he's maybe, even though he has that sort of, I guess it's sort of an inhibitor chip of sorts in his head. It's, he still has issues, and I'm sure at some point he's going to have to confront those and make a choice. So yeah, I think it's another wonderful episode that sort of makes me interested to see where the story goes from here. I'm kind of worried for Wrecker.
A little bit.
I don't want that chip to switch on and then him, may possibly going after Omega if they feel like she's a jet, if she has midichlorians in her or whatever.
Oh, stop.
Or M count.
There you go. There you go.
Force sensitive. That's the that's the Star Wars politically correct term. But yeah, I think I'll give it a 4.5 as well. and I think, of course, I think probably every time my scene's probably going to involve Wrecker. I love the scene where they're about to crash, and he's like, "We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die," and he looks up, he's like, "I mean, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna be fine." I thought that was so funny. Oh, by the way, and I love the homage to Empire Strikes Back when they've crashed, because they're wearing similar like respirators, and
yes.
there's a creature that's attacking their ship. I love the sort of callback to Empire Strikes Back, which is that poetry that George Lucas used to say about like when events repeat themselves in some way. There's this rhyme to it when you see that happen again. So yeah, I love. I thought that was really cool. So, but yeah, another great episode. It'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
It's
Yeah,
really funny when I saw that scene, I immediately thought, oh, this is probably going to be Christopher G. Moore's favorite scene.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Well, yeah. Also, there's a little bit of aliens in there as well, because I feel like there's little things that come down are very like the ship from Aliens, if you remember that,
Ooh.
and then being attacked by a creature. But yeah, that was. I was like, ooh, Empire Strikes Back the whole time during that part.
Oh man. Well, I really enjoyed this as well. I'll give it 4.5. I'll just follow the rest of my fellow stormtroopers here. I love that there's two stories going on. I thought the structure of this episode and the writing was really strong, and the animation as well. Because I think, like Slattman mentioned, you see the character emote in the animation, and that's often a hard thing to really accomplish well, and they do a great job here. And it's got Tarkin. I love Tarkin, so the more Tarkin, the more I like it. Give me a Tarkin series. I don't know what you would do with it, but they've done Tarkin.
Him being a cheapskate.
Origin story.
I mean, there is
Star Wars accountant.
There is.
It would be a political thriller.
Yeah, there is lore with Tarkin, but whatever. I just. Yeah, the more him, and I like when they go to they go after Saw Gerrera again, and when they land on the planet, Saw's already gone, but they're getting the last of I guess the citizens right off the planet, and that doesn't go well for them, and it's quite it's a bit like you said, it's very dark, and Crosshair is very much in charge, and when he gets he's one of those kind of leaders that if you don't agree with him, then you're not part of the crew. And he takes that into action, and the other ones line up, and I think that's going to come back. I mean, I'm not applying rocket science here. That's going to be an important part of the next couple of stories of what that decision and what the other three think of that, and it's going to put some turmoil into place, and I think he's feeling it too. I think when, like Slattman said, when he sits down, he looks at the wall, and he looks at the others, and he's like, "What have I become?" You kind of feel it. You feel like that's the words he's thinking, right? What have I become? And then of course you get all the Omega stuff too, and her really connecting, and she's got a new father figure, right? And then of course she's got 3 uncles. It feels like a family, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm just wondering when she's going to get a lightsaber. So anyway, I'll just stop there. And my favorite scene, I'm gonna be cheap. I'm going to go with that final scene with Omega, and when they present her the room, and what I like about it is that it's showing off a whole lot of stuff about these characters, right? It's showing that the hard characters also have the soft spot, and then our young character, is still very young, but leading up to that, she also is very capable and is a member of this team, even though she's not a soldier, if you will, right? She's a different kind of member, and it humanizes everybody, and it really I think, like we said in the first episode, this isn't the show I thought I was going to get, but I'm very happy I'm getting it. I think it's evolving into quite a wonderful series, and I'm hoping that it pays off. I'm hoping they can keep this up and deliver as the shows go on. So there you go. All right, well, we're running long, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I think the only thing we talked about pre-show and didn't mention was War Mantle, which was mentioned in Rogue One, right? And we get it mentioned here again, and of course it comes along with Rampart, who becomes Admiral Rampart as he succeeds, and it'll be interesting to see where that character goes. I was wondering pre-show if that was a new character or not, and what I found out that it is a new character. Is that right, Slattman? Have you heard of this character before?
I've never heard of him.
Okay, and that's what the
writing's on the wall for him to not be around much longer.
He's gonna be that leader of the stormtrooper that wanted to be the leader of the stormtroopers. He may not last 16 episodes.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, well, Slattman, Christopher, Vanessa, thank you for joining me. This was a great discussion. As we talked longer than the episode, so that's what we do. Let's say good night.
Good night.
Good night.